Once upon a time, in a peaceful little village near the Kumkum Mountains, there lived two bright and cheerful girls named Itong and Kekere. They were the best of friends and did almost everything together. Their parents were neighbors, and even though both families were poor, they were very kind and hardworking. Kekere's parents were farmers. They didn't own their own land, so they worked on other people's farms and got paid with a portion of the crops or some money. Itong's parents, on the other hand, were food traders. They bought and sold grains, yams, and other farm produce at the village market. Kekere also had a little brother whom she loved dearly. The two girls went to the same school, played together at the stream, and even ate lunch in the same place every day. Their parents always prepared their meals in the morning and left them with a kind neighbor while they went off to work. When the girls came home from school, they would pick up their food and spend time playing in the neighbor's compound until their parents returned. This happy routine continued until one day, Itong came home with exciting news. "I'm going to visit my aunt in the city," she told Kekere with a big smile. "I'll be gone for a whole week." Kekere's heart sank. She couldn't imagine a day without Itong, let alone a whole week. She hugged her friend tightly and whispered, "I'll miss you so much." "I'll miss you too," Itong said, "but I'll be back before you know it." The first few days without Itong were lonely for Kekere. She went to school as usual, but everything felt different without her best friend. One afternoon, after school, Kekere went with her little brother to the neighbor's house to pick up their lunch. Their mother had made a pot of beans that morning, but when Kekere opened the container, she gasped. More than half of the beans were gone, and what was left smelled sour. "Who ate our food?" she asked, looking around at the children playing in the compound. No one answered. Instead, they laughed and teased her. Kekere's little brother started crying from hunger. Feeling helpless, she threw away the spoiled beans and took her brother home. At home, she remembered some dried palm kernel seeds her mother had left behind the house. Kekere cracked the dried kernels open, one by one, and gave the seed to her brother to eat. It wasn't much, but it stopped his crying. While Kekere was feeding her brother palm kernel, a man nicknamed Otondo came home. Otondo was a hunter and lived in the same compound. Every day, he returned with different animals from the forest: chameleons, monkeys, and even antelopes. People in the village often wondered how he was so good at hunting. Some even whispered that he used dark magic. That day, Otondo saw Kekere breaking the palm kernel at the backyard. "Why are you struggling like that? Is there no food for you and your brother to eat?" he asked kindly. "Come to my room and I'll give you some gari to soak and eat with those kernels. It will fill your stomach better." Kekere was overjoyed and grateful. "Thank you, Uncle Otondo," she said, following him quickly to his room. When she entered, Otondo closed the door behind her. Suddenly, Kekere felt uneasy. She just wanted the gari and to leave quickly. Before she could say anything, Otondo came closer and started touching her in a way that made her very uncomfortable. "Stop!" she cried, but the compound was quiet, and no one heard her except her little brother, who was outside. He ran to the door and banged on it with his small fist, screaming for his sister. The noise startled Otondo. He opened the door quickly and let Kekere out. She ran to her brother, shaking and scared, but she couldn't explain what had just happened. When their mother came home that evening, Kekere's brother told her what had happened. But instead of listening to Kekere's side of the story, her mother scolded and beat her. "I've told you not to collect things from people," her mother shouted. "If you had stayed where I told you to, this wouldn't have happened." Kekere cried all night. She tried to explain, but her mother wouldn't listen. From that day on, she began to feel all alone. The next day, Otondo acted as if nothing had happened. He called Kekere to help him with something, but she ignored him. He called on her again to bring a broom for him to sweep his room, but she ignored him again. He called on her again to come and get a piece of the hunt he had kept for her mom, but she ignored him again. Her mother noticed her behavior and got angry. "Why are you being stubborn?" her mother asked. "Go and take what Uncle Otondo has given us and take the broom to him." Kekere reluctantly obeyed, but she felt sick to her stomach every time she had to go near Otondo. She took the broom to him and collected the piece of the hunt in return. Later that day, her mother was going to visit a friend not far from home, so she asked her to sweep the backyard before she returned. Kekere looked for the broom but couldn't find it. She remembered she had given it to Uncle Otondo earlier. When she went and knocked on his door to ask for it, Otondo smiled and said, "It's behind the door in my room. You can get it yourself." Kekere hesitated, but Otondo moved aside and let her walk in. When she reached for the broom, she froze. Behind the door was a giant python, coiled up with its shiny scales, glistering in the dim light, with the broom resting on it. She screamed in terror, but before she could run, Otondo grabbed her hand and locked the door. He threatened her with the snake and told her not to tell anyone about what he was going to do. He said he would kill her parents if she did. Too frightened to resist, Kekere endured the terrible experience. She cried through the pain. From that day, Otondo continued to hurt Kekere whenever he got the chance. She became quiet and withdrawn, avoiding her family and stopped playing with her little friends in the compound and at school. Her parents noticed the change, but didn't understand what was wrong. She started having nightmares about snakes and poor performances in school. Neighbors concluded that she was possessed by demons, so her parents took her to churches for prayers, but nothing seemed to help. When Itong returned from the city, she immediately noticed that something was wrong with her best friend. One afternoon, she took Kekere to the stream and gently asked her what was bothering her. At first, Kekere stayed silent, but then she broke down in tears and told Itong everything. To Kekere's surprise, Itong began to cry too. "Otondo did the same thing to me before I left for the city," she whispered. "When I told my parents, they didn't believe me. They beat me and said I was lying." The two friends hugged each other tightly. "We have to stick together," they said. The two friends decided to protect each other. They made a promise. Whenever Otondo called one of them, the other would stay nearby and scream for help if the door got locked. Together, they outsmarted Otondo and kept each other safe until their families eventually moved to another community. Years later, Itong and Kekere grew up and were haunted by these experiences. They couldn't get into a relationship with any man and promised never to get married. One day, a group of doctors and health workers from the city visited their community. They came to talk about therapy and mental health. Itong and Kekere attended the meeting out of curiosity. As the doctors spoke about how trauma from the past could affect someone's present life, Itong and Kekere felt as though the doctors were talking directly to them. After the meeting, they hesitated, but finally approached one of the doctors. They shared their story for the first time since they were children. The doctor listened with kindness and told them that what they were feeling was normal for someone who had experienced what they had gone through. You don't have to carry this pain alone, the doctor said gently. There are ways to heal. With the doctor's encouragement, Itong and Kekere started therapy. It wasn't easy at first. Talking about their painful past brought back memories they had tried so hard to forget. But their therapist was patient and helped them take small steps towards healing. After their healing process, they both started an organization to help children who had been hurt like they were and became a voice for the children. Parents, listen to your children and stand up against people who hurt them this way. Always pay attention to your children. The signs are always there. They trust you to protect them. Children are precious and their voices matter. Listen to them, believe them, and stand by them. For those who have been hurt, listen. Healing takes time, and it's okay to seek help. Face your fears and find the courage to heal. Together, we can say no to all forms of abuse on children.